Okay. I'll call the Tangipahoa Parish public hearing to order for September the 11th, 2023. And there are 3 items on the public hearing. The first being officially renaming McGarry Lane to Fred Clark Road in District 10. Discussed this one at the last meeting. Any comments there? Number 2 is a special event, September the 30th, 2023, Rodeo Music Festival, 42489 Chapman Road, Hammond, District 8. And that is in my district, and we have all the documentation necessary for that special events permit. I think the gentleman that's doing it is here this evening. The third one is ordinance to designate and declare certain Tangipahoa Parish assets to be surplus. Anyone here to speak on that? If not, we'll close the public hearing, call the council meeting to order. I'll ask you if you have a cell phone to please either mute it or turn it off. Mr. Joseph will lead us in the invocation, and Mr. Mayu will lead us in the pledge.
Okay, all rise, please. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings we've received. We thank you for our health. Thank you for our strength. We thank you for our peace of mind. We thank you for our families and our friends. And on today, a special thank you, a special blessings for all the first responders, those who place themselves in harm's way, those who run toward danger, not away from it. Our firemen, police officers, military personnel. And Lord, help us never to forget 9/11, 2001, a day that will live in infamy. I say this prayer: O God, our hope and refuge, in our distress we come quickly to you. Shock and horror of that tragic day have subsided, replaced now with emptiness and a longing for innocence lost. We come remembering those who lost their lives in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. We are mindful of the sacrifice of public servants who demonstrated the greatest love of all by laying down their lives for friends. We commit their souls to your eternal care and celebrate their gifts to a fallen humanity. We come, Lord, remembering, and we come in hope, not in ourselves, but in you. As foundation we once thought secure have been shaken, we are reminded of the illusions of security. And commemorating this tragedy, we give you thanks for your presence in our time of need. And we seek to worship you in spirit and in truth, our guide and our guardian. And all the saints within the sound of my voice responded by saying, Amen. Thank you.
All veterans and active military please stand in proper salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Carlo. Appreciate it.
Jill, would you call roll, please?
Mr. Forrest, Mr. Ingraffia.
Here.
Mr. Joseph.
Present.
Mr. Bruno.
Here.
Mr. Richtel.
Here.
Mr. Mayu.
Here.
Mr. Wells.
Here.
Mr. Vial.
Here.
Ms. Hyde. Here. Ms. Coates. Here.
Okay, the next item is adoption of the minutes for the regular meeting dated August 28th, 2023.
So moved.
First by Mr. Joseph, there's a
Second.
second. Second by Mr. Wells. Would you call roll, please?
Mr. Ingraffia.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno. Mr. Richtel.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayu.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Yes.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Okay, anyone wishing to address agenda items which are not on the public hearing? Okay. Mr. Miller, Parish Presence Report.
Good evening. We have a few items, but the first one is a proclamation for Louisiana Flood Awareness Week. Louisiana marks this week to recognize the efforts across the state to work with FEMA, the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, to build systems of programs and infrastructure to reduce the effects of flooding for our parish. So we have a resolution that does that. Mr. VL has signed it, and myself. So we'll be sending that on to the state for their notification that we did it too. It has something to do with our grants as part of our grant program. So that item is taken care of. And item 2, thankfully, the property has been cleaned up, so we don't have to do it. They did it this past weekend. And just to give you a quick update on that, because of the work that our folks are doing in that department in the blighted property, since we began, there's been 37 properties that structures were cleaned off of by the property owner. We, parish government, has done 2. Well, all of those 37, of course, were notified that we were going to do it if they did not. So our efforts work there. There's 3 scheduled for starting tomorrow. There's 3 that will be done, and there's 23 more that they're working with in various phases of the process. So there's a lot of work being done on that. So there's really no action on 2. And then item 3, there's not going to be any need for action there. There's actually not a change. They thought there was going to be a change order. It does not require a change order, the work that's being done. And then number 4, it was supposed to be substantial completion, but there was a change order that we got late. So next meeting, we'll come back with the change order and the substantial completion for the East Minnesota Park the sidewalk project. The change order, I will give you a heads up, though, the change order is actually a reduction in cost, so it'll be a good one to get. Those don't happen very often, so we'll be excited about that. So with that being said, all of our action items are taken care of. Microphone down.
So item 4 is a motion to table. Is it coming back up?
Either way, you can table it, or we'll just put it back, whichever way you want to do it, because it's going to be different. It has a change order.
Okay, no problem. We'll move on then.
All right. Well, like Mr. Joseph alluded to in his prayer today, we all know that today is 9/11, and may we never forget. We don't ever want to forget that. Others may think that our country is going to fail by doing things like that or fall because of things that they do, but we know better, and we'll always rise and continue to be the best country in the world. And I'm so thankful that we get to be part of that, and God bless you for the work that y'all do, and always may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, under regular business, we have a special event approval, September 30th, 2023, Rodeo Music Festival, 42489 Chapman Road, Hammond, District 8. That is actually my district, and they have gone through all the proper paperwork. But for the record, I need to enter one thing before we do this item, and as the current request for what it's about is they're requesting more than one special events permit. Okay, so for the record, the current request for a special event permit will be approved for this event. However, moving forward, this location must be approved by Planning and Development as commercial development before any other events are approved at this location. So you've had those dialogues with planning, and I've had dialogue with the attorney. I just wanted to read that into the record, but I would like a motion to approve the special events permit.
So moved.
Mr. Rizzo's first. Is there a second? Who was second? Ms. Hyde. Would you call roll, please?
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 9-0. The next item is audit report presentation, James Lambert Riggs and Associates.
All right, good evening, everybody. Paul Riggs, the audit director at James Lambert Riggs and Associates, and I'm here tonight to go over the results of the December 31st, 2022 audit. We want to thank the council for allowing James Lambert Riggs and Associates to be your auditors, and we want to thank the parish president and the administrative staff, especially the accounting personnel, for their assistance during the audit. Dennis James and I met with Chairman Vial, Mr. Miller, Joe Thomas, Missy, and Ms. Bevan on August 31st. We met for about an hour, reviewed the financial statements in detail, and this evening I'm going to give a quick overview of the results. Now, this report is about 100 pages long. There's a lot of information in there, so at your leisure, please read through it. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call anyone at our office, and we will be glad to go over anything in there with you. In accordance with the auditing standards that we're supposed to follow, we examine daily processes for cash receipts, cash disbursements, payroll, grants, etc. We tested transactions in those areas. We examined documentation from parish personnel. We analyzed various accounts. We met with parish personnel. We read through the bound financial statements, and all of our procedures led us to the result that the financial statements are good, and as a result, we are issuing a clean opinion on your financial statements. This is the highest and best result that we can give, and if we were to compare this to a grade in school, this will be an A grade, so good job. I only want to talk about two brief financial highlights. The parish is in very good financial health. The general fund did operate in a deficit position last year, primarily due to timing issues. We received the money for certain projects in one year and we spend it in the next year, and also the timing of when we do certain big projects like repairs over at the courthouse or various infrastructure procedures when we buy certain pieces of equipment and so forth. So the fact that we had a deficit in the general fund is not a big deal. I think we had a massive surplus last year, again, due to timing issues. Concerning federal money, during 2020, the parish spent about $14 million from federal sources. 2021, as a result of Hurricane Ida, this jumped up to about $58 million, primarily due to, again, Ida money. During 2022, our federal money was back down to about $24 million, due to about $10 million we spent on the remaining cleanup due to Hurricane Ida. So if you try to compare 2020, 2021, and 2022's financials, there's going to be a lot of big differences, primarily due to the FEMA money that we've received, how that's being spent, and so forth. So those are just some of the big highlights I wanted to point out. Again, you're getting your monthly financial statements. These results in here are, back to December 31st of last year, so I don't want to spend any time going over anything in detail. In addition to our opinion on the numbers, if you will, we also have to issue a report on your internal control procedures. That is your processes for cash receipts, disbursements, payroll, bank reconciliations, and so forth. We have examined these areas and we do not have any comments or findings for your internal control processes. We also have to issue a report on whether the parish complied with various aspects of state law, and this year we do have two compliance findings. The first concerns the parish's compliance with state law regarding budgeting. State law requires that we amend our budget to a certain threshold for our actual revenues and expenses compared to budget. And in a couple of funds, we were just outside of those thresholds. This is an issue that we've seen for a number of years, and part of the problem is we begin our budget process in the fall, and we're trying to develop next year's budget and amend our current year budget based on things that are going to happen 3 or 4 months from now. And this isn't even taking into account any year-end adjustments that are going to be made in the springtime. So the fact that we're able to do such a good job in and of itself is pretty good. So we do have to report a compliance finding there, but it's not a big issue in our opinion. The second compliance finding concerns the late submission of the audit to the legislative auditor. This finding actually was not originally in this report. We did apply for and were granted an extension of time to complete the audit, which was through August the 31st. However, in the eyes of the legislative auditor, this is what they refer to as a non-emergency extension. And by the way, they let us know all of this stuff on September the 5th, about a week ago. There's a report that the legislative auditor generates for agencies that do not complete their audit on a timely basis. They lovingly refer to it as the naughty list, if you will. We filed our extension and were granted our extension, so we did not appear on this naughty list. I repeat, we did not appear on this list. However, because they consider this to be a non-emergency extension request, they did want us to go and put a late submission finding in the audit. As I said, we met with management on August the 31st. We submitted the audit later that afternoon, and it wasn't until the morning of September the 5th, a few days later, that they came back and said, no, we want you to put a late finding in the audit as a result. So we did have to go back and put that late finding in the audit. But again, the audit was originally submitted by the deadline. It's just more of a technicality in the way they handle extension requests that they wanted this to be in there.
Yes, sir.
Paul, I mean, in my opinion, that's pretty picky. I'm just being honest with you, on the state side I'm talking about. Then what would be an emergency?
Emergency would be, I think, life or limb is at risk, or if there's some kind of presidential disaster. We did file an extension last year, and the reason we gave was due to the amount of damage we had during Hurricane Ida and trying to deal with all the FEMA aftermath. And so they considered that to be an emergency extension. 2019, we requested an extension due to COVID, which was going on at that time. And that was, I guess, an emergency in their respect.
Okay.
So, the last report that we have in the actual audit is on what we refer to as your single audit, and that is how you're spending your federal dollars. Based on the federal auditing guidelines, we had to look at 4 programs this year. Section 8, hazard mitigation, highway planning and construction, and a federal transit grant. We are pleased to say we did not have any issues or comments at all regarding these federal programs. Everything was in order. Everything looked great. We did not have any comments or findings or issues dealing with your federal grants. So we do, again, want to thank the accounting department and especially the grants department for doing such a good job on that.
And how much money was that?
Microphone.
Mike?
How much of the federal money was involved in those 4? Do you know right offhand?
Section 8 was about $3 million. The highway planning and the federal transit were about $1 million each, and hazard mitigation was $1.5 million to $2 million, somewhere in that range. So
$7,
maybe
$8
about
million.
$7, $8, $9 million, somewhere in that range. Yes. All right. So this completes our summary of the audit for 2022. Next, we need to discuss the results of the statewide agreed-upon procedures engagement. That's the smaller report. I'm sure you're all familiar. These are some special supplemental procedures mandated by the legislative auditor that we have to do in conjunction with the regular audit. These procedures include 14 major areas such as credit cards, payroll, ethics training, and others. And there are about 70 individual procedures that we have to do. And we had 5 individual procedures that we had little hiccups on that we had to meet with management, and they will be working to correct before year end. Just to kind of briefly tell you what they are, we need to have some additional language in our written policies and procedures regarding sexual harassment training. We are going through sexual harassment training. We just need to have additional language in our policies and procedures. We had an item dealing with, there were a few outstanding checks that had been outstanding for more than a year on our bank statements that we need to take a look at. We needed a little bit more documentation on some credit card charges. We had to prepare a report on sexual harassment in accordance with state law every year. The report is technically supposed to be done by February the 1st, and I think it was dated February the 9th. So we still did it just about a week later than it should have been, but again, not a major issue. So, to summarize, we are issuing a clean audit opinion. The parish had a good year financially, and we had a good year concerning our federal grants, and we just had 2 compliance findings, one on the budget and one in the late submission of the audit. Overall, we do consider this to be a great audit, and the parish should be very pleased with its performance during 2022. So, again, from everybody at James Lambert Riggs, we want to thank the council, thank the administration, thank all the accounting staff and grants staff for helping us out. We really appreciate it. Mr. Miller has a very, very professional staff, a very accomplished accounting staff here, and they are a joy to work with. Every time we ask a question, they are very fast in their response, and we really appreciate the help and assistance that they give us throughout the process. So,
Thank you.
if anybody has any questions for me?
You can just repeat that grade on the overall.
It would be an A if I was giving a grade on it.
Missy, an A, Missy, that's the best you can do?
All right, any other questions from the council? Is there a motion to accept the audit? First by Mr.
I'll
Wells.
second.
Second by Mr. Joseph. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Joseph?
Yes?
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes. Okay. 9-0. Official renaming of McGarry Lane to Fred Clark Road. What is that? To Fred Clark Road in District 10.
I'll make that
All
motion.
right, Ms. Coates is the first, and Mr. Wells is the second. Would you call roll, please?
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Okay, next item is adoption of an ordinance to designate and declare certain tangible parish assets to be surplus. Is there a motion? All right. Is there a second? Okay.
Yes, I got it.
Mr. Bruno and Mr. Joseph. Okay.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Okay, passes 9-0. Next item is introduction of ordinance 2353, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 10 Animals, Article 2 Livestock. It's recommended by the DRC. It has to do with animals running at large, and if they're picked up in our old ordinance, it says they can be taken to, someone will manage them, they get paid so much a day. We're increasing that to $10 a day.
So moved.
That's what's going on with that.
So moved.
The old fee was 5, yes. Ms. Hyde was the first, is there a second?
Second.
Call roll, please.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes. 9-0. Next item is introduction of ordinance 2354, an ordinance authorizing the parish president or his authorized designee. I think we want to remove this one, is that correct? Yes, sir. Yes, is there a motion just to remove, please? Mr. Bruno, is there a second?
Yes.
And Mr. Joseph, call roll, please.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Passes 9-0. Let's see. Oh, the next ordinance is an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 4, Standards for Subdivision of Property, Section 36-90, Minor Subdivision Standards, Family Petitions. And Ms. Tracy, would you come up here and give us a little guide through this one, please?
Good afternoon, Council. This has gone through DRC and has been discussed extensively, bringing back our family partitions. The intent was not to impede families from dividing their property. So we're asking you guys to consider this for introduction. Some of the changes that we think are going to help families is instead of the 60-foot servitude or right-of-way, we're going to allow a 35-foot access servitude. And, you know, rightfully so, if it's a family piece of property, we're asking not to use, you know, all their property for right-of-ways and servitudes. There are some definitions in here that have to be listed on the survey to ensure that these are truly family partitions. There's an affidavit we're asking for these families to sign to ensure that they're indeed doing it for families. And there's not going to be a fee for these divisions. Some of our other divisions, there's a fee for review, and we're asking you guys not to charge for these family partitions.
Tracy, can you, if you wouldn't mind,
Your microphone.
Would you explain, if a person divides that property and gives a portion to, say, one kid, let's say he's got 10 acres and he wants to give that kid an acre to build a house, he'll be able to do that, and then what is the restrictions as far as that down the road?
So our other restrictions are, it's a 10-year limit on dividing it again or giving it or selling it. So that's in conjunction with the other divisions of land that we have now. If you decide to do any future divisions, you're welcome to do that, but there's other regulations that go into play, you know. You've got the small partitions, you've got the mini divisions, and wetlands are required, drainage is required, so you can't not do it, but there's other additional requirements that have to be.
And that would only be the portion that they split to give would
Correct.
fall under the 10, not the original piece?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Rizzo?
Now, you can't even divide it again amongst a family member?
So once you're, the definition here for family is going to be the direct descendants of the person that owns the property. So you can give to your children. After 10 years, then those children can give after that.
I mean, there's still a 10-year restriction on a family member dividing with another family member.
Correct, under a family partition.
What would happen, buddy, say you got 10 acres, you want to give your son an acre. That only thing that comes under that 10-year restriction is that 1 acre. The other 9 acres are not under restriction. So if you wanted to give the following year, give him another acre, you can give him another acre, but then the 10 years would start on that acre. Or if you got another kid you wanted to give an acre to, you could do that and it wouldn't affect the 8 acres. So,
Well, what I'm thinking about is if a family member gave 10 acres to a family member, and that family member wanted to give 5 of that 10 to his child,
So-
he can't do that for 10 years?
For 10 years. The definition is your direct descendants. And that was discussed in DRC, because once you start branching out the family tree, how many people does that, ultimately you can have a major subdivision and not have to comply to any of the major subdivision regulations.
see, we had completely cut
Although-
out the family partition.
Right.
But
And this, the thing about it is, we did it because, as you know, we were trying to protect the family, but then they were finding ways to skirt the law. So by doing it this way, we used to have a 2-year limit where they had to keep it 2 years, but then after 2 years, they would turn around and sell it to a developer, and then you got a subdivision on a private road with no restrictions at all. But this way, it's a genuine family partition, because when you give that acre to that child, then you know that child's got to hang on to it at least for 10 years.
well, additionally though, if they choose to, they can then go to the,
They can
through
go
the
to the planning
development
commission.
process, through the
Yeah.
planning commission in our office,
And
and
do a
go through
minor
the whole
subdivision.
subdivision
Yeah.
process.
I understand you.
They can do that,
Or a
they
smaller
could do that
partition
the next
where,
day if they
yeah.
wanted to.
So it's
Any other
not, it's not 10 and done, you know, there's other options they can go through, other avenues, but they have to provide additional information.
I understand.
Yes, sir.
Would the second division come under a variance, or would it just go to the planning and the planning approving it? It wouldn't have to come to the council as a variance?
This procedure is done administratively. If you come in and meet all the regulations, it's done administratively in the office.
Okay.
So there's no planning commission involved.
Okay.
Only the planning commission, Joy, if they decide to take the
Correct.
rest of the land and do something else
But
with it.
then you wouldn't have to come and get a variance after the planning?
No.
Okay. All right, that's my question. Thank you.
Look, let me tell you, we beat this around a lot. And, you know, nothing that you absolutely do is gonna protect everything. But I think this is gonna go back to where the people that actually wanna give their child a piece of land, it's gonna help them. And this is gonna probably stop some of these developments on these private driveways and stuff like that, like we've been having trouble with over the last 6 months.
So that's the main thing. We don't want to hurt the
No.
family man that's got his kids, wants to put his kids living on his property, because, I think what we had before, it was noted in that way.
And we talked about what happens if that kid, and say he's married and they get a divorce, and they have to sell the house on that acre of land. They always, the variance process, that they can come to Buddy or you and say, look, we got a hardship here, we're getting a divorce, we have to settle the property, then that would be up to each individual councilman if you wanted to grant a variance for that situation. So there's an out in there
Right.
if you needed it.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve.
That's Ms. Hyde. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And Mr. Bruno is second. Would you call roll, please?
Ms. Hyde,
Yes.
Ms. Coates,
Yes.
Mr. Graffia,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes. Item 12 is introduction of an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 6, additional agencies required, Section 36-143, General Infrastructure Reviews and Approvals, Fire Marshal, Fire District Review, Dry Hydrants. And this is one that went through the Fire Board, the DRC, about putting dry hydrants in some of these subdivisions. And I think it's passed all the tests so far. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Hyde, is there a second?
Second.
Coates, a second.
Kim.
Call roll, please.
Ms. Coates. Yes. Mr. Graffia.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Yes.
Okay, 9-0. Item 13, there's a request to remove that. That's the condemnation. So do we need a motion or can we just remove it?
So moved.
Mr. Bruno's the first. Is there a second?
Yes.
And Mr. Joseph is the second. Would you call roll, please?
Mr. Graffia.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph. Mr. Bruno.
Yeah.
Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Yes.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
All right, item 14 is passed 9-0. Item 14, adoption of resolution R 2329, a resolution of the Tangipahoa Parish Council President Government for preliminary approval to seek DEQ permit for a construction and debris site at 12399 Gas Line Road, Independence, Louisiana, District 4. Mr. Bruno?
Yes, I want to make it clear first that there was some paperwork that we were expecting. If it's okay, legal counsel, if we could pass the resolution and based on that proper paperwork being submitted, if that would be okay with y'all? Get out of the way, because these people have been waiting, and I think they've already basically got the approval, haven't they?
Right. Well, no, no. This starts the process for them
Okay.
to get approval for this type of site.
Now-
Without this, they can't take the first step.
Okay, now, the paperwork that we're waiting for is from their side, is that correct?
That's the way I understand it.
Okay, and
Yes, sir.
Justin, you know about what is required? So-
And so everybody's clear, again, this is to start the process. DEQ will have to determine whether they want to allow it, but without this, they can't even
Okay.
apply.
Well, if it's okay, I'm gonna put it in the form of a motion to adopt the resolution based on getting the proper paperwork from the applicant, from their attorney, that everything is good.
Where's this going?
This is on George Road,
Okay.
west of Independence.
Okay.
Okay, there's a first. Is there a second on that?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph? Call roll, please.
Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno.
Yeah.
Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Yes.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Mr. Graffia.
Yes.
Passes 9-0. Beer, wine, and liquor permits? There being none. Legal matters?
None tonight?
None. Councilman privileges? And I will make a comment here. I have a request to speak, however, it's not on an agenda item, so you and I can have a conversation after this meeting to discuss our process, okay?
David, I have one for
Yes.
council privileges.
Go ahead.
This Friday, all of you are invited to Kate Square in Hammond. We having a prisoner of war missing in action day. We have it every year at this time. It's a national day. All of you are invited. Dr. Bill Wheat will be the keynote speaker for that day. We're starting at 9:30 a.m., Kate Square, Hammond.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Take a little personal privilege, and I'm not campaigning, so don't go thinking that. So today is my daughter's birthday, and when 9/11 happened, she really struggled. So I would just like to say happy birthday.
All right, we do have, Mr. Miller, you may want to comment on this. We have those flood prevention meetings coming up 13th and 14th.
Yes, so that's the study that Army Corps of Engineers is doing for the Tangipahoa watershed, and it's public input. There's one in Hammond and one in Amite.
Yes.
So make sure it's posted all over on Facebook and all the social media, newspaper, everywhere we put it, so people can come talk to us about what they feel is the best way for us to keep moving forward.
Great. Mr. Rizzo, thanks for reminding me of that. Is anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved by Mr. Bruno. Any objections? There being no objection, meeting adjourned. We have a fire board meeting after this meeting.